Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Thank you and welcome to another episode of The Issue. I'm your host, Meyer. Let's jump right into it. First, we got some current events for you guys. So, on Friday, there was a mass shooting in Virginia, I believe, with at least 11 dead. And the troubling thing about when it comes to mass shootings and stuff like that is it's for one, it's a gun issue and it's a mental health issue. And the problem with both of those things is that in America, guns are such a culturally embedded thing that removing them or somehow stopping or making certain weapons illegal, making certain ammunition or a clip size or anything of that matter illegal, it's almost like doing the same thing you would do with like the drug war. All it's really going to create is a legal, more illicit market that's just going to lead to more death and destruction. So you'd have to find a real way to get at those things, man, because it's hard. And the mental health issue aspect of the issue is a problem too. Because how do you know? How could you really tell who you know is getting these guns, who's selling them to them? Because regardless, just like drugs, no matter how illegal it is, it's very accessible, and guns are the same way. You can make any assault rifle illegal. It's not going to change how accessible it is to people because of how ingrained it is in our culture. You know, it's a part of our Constitution, and it's every American's right to own one and to have one. But a situation where you have 11 people dead is something that we see almost every week, every month now, and it's really troubling. And I can't tell you what the answers are, but the solution has to be out there and needs to be looked at for sure. So let's move on to the next topic. Oh, Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher was testified in court after a woman he was allegedly going to take out for drinks ends up dead. Now, the only thing that really caught my eye when it came to this story was how fucking terrified Ashton looked in this photo. I thought it was a scene from one of his movies till I looked and saw how terrified he was, and possibly he has to go pee. But yeah, it's a funny picture. I would say that much. Who was that? ABC reported on that? Who's reported on that? NBC. I mean, look at his face, Jesus. Man, I wouldn't be a fly on the wall on that. He looks so terrified and uncomfortable. And like he just might have got done doing the porn with that stash. But anyway, let's move on to the next topic. Oh, Bobby breaks his silence finally. In a statement he made that saying that if he didn't think Trump committed a crime, he would have said that. And I don't know, what does that even mean? You came up with a 400-page report listing details of crime, but decided that you couldn't indict him. But now you're saying that if you think he committed a crime, if you didn't think he committed a crime, you would have said so. So I guess I understand why he plans to resign. That's it's troubling. It was 2 years and I think $40 million that they spent on this Mueller report that for 2 months people sat on and did absolutely nothing about at all whatsoever. Now you're starting to get a little traction because he came out of the closet and decided to say something. But it's the lack of initiative by the Democrats to do anything is so irritating. Like, I try to be as non-biased as I can, right? But I genuinely would like liberals to win at something sometimes. But when you have a layup that you just brick constantly over and over again, it's disheartening. And hope things change, man. But let's get on to the next topic. Ooh, Bezos' ex-wife made out with $35 billion, and half of which, God bless her heart, she plans on donating to charity. Now that's all fine and dandy. The only thing that struck me struck me when I saw this picture was that this might be a little bit racist, but that might just be her sister, or his sister. I'm sorry. If you shaved her head and covered her in oil sheen and sat her out in the sun for an hour, you could mistake them as twins. Next topic. Oh, and this bullshit. This is why Democrats can't win at nothing. You have 23 people running for president. It's so many people we couldn't even fit it in the damn picture. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. Who we got here? Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Andrew Yang, Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, Michael Bennett, Bill de Blasio. Fuck. It's a snoozer. No, you guys should all lock each other. You guys could all get together, lock yourselves in a room, and just play Russian roulette. And the last four to get out of there alive should be the only people we have running for president. Because this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever to have that many candidates who are all going to try to eat themselves alive or tear each other apart for this nomination. Telling you right now, it's going to get ugly. Now, I will say, out of the 23 that's up there, there are a few to me who stand out. For one, Joe Biden, I think would be a terrible pick for the nomination. He has a bad track record for one. I don't think he's ever gotten past the primary. This would be his third time running for president, and he hasn't got past the primary. The first time, I think he got in trouble for what did he do? He plagiarized. He got into a plagiarizing scandal. And then the second one, he didn't make it past the debate stage, and then here he is in his third attempt. Buttigieg has something going for him. He was a ex-military, he was also gay, and but he pokes at Donald Trump in a particular way that I think Donald Trump has a lot of trouble with, as far as he always pokes at the fact that Donald Trump has never served. He's never served. He repeats that talking point over and over again. And a lot of things don't kind of stick to Donald Trump, but that right there is something I think absolutely could get under Donald Trump's skin. Tulsi Gabbard is another one I like a lot. I know a lot of people don't like her because when she was young, in her 20s, she worked for her dad's they used to try to convert gay people, basically. And she, I guess at one point, boasted about it in her life, but she grew up in this kind of religious, cult, basically, and was indoctrinated into it, and has since apologized many times over it. But there are many people, mostly people on the left, who go after her over and over again about it after she's apologized a million times. She's also a veteran, combat veteran at that, and so I actually like her a lot. And my brother with the smile, I don't know your name at all, but get that man a Colgate commercial. Jesus, look at them pearly whites. You have Andrew Yang, who's running on a platform of, what's the word for it? Universal basic income. He wants to grant everybody, I think, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a month as just a basic income that you would just get for being alive. I don't know how or who or where that money would come from, but hey, if they get you elected, go right ahead, bro. Let's get on to some hot takes. Now, hot takes are a new segment. Well, the topic ticker, I call it, is a new segment too. Thought I'd add something nice and fresh for you guys. Hot takes is something that I added recently. It's a way for you, the viewer, to contact me on social media. Drop your questions or topics that you want me to talk about or say or anything like that, and we talk about it here on this here on the show. So the first hot take comes in from Watch My Kicks. at Instagram on Instagram asked, "What do I think about the tariffs Trump is imposing on goods from China?" Well, I don't know if Trump understands that when you put a tariff on somebody's goods, right? So basically, all the goods that are coming in from China, and I think he also proposed to do it to Mexico as well. But all the goods that you're getting from there, um, you're putting you're charging them an import tax basically to sell their items to here, but they don't have to pay that because all they're going to do is in turn uh, pay it forward back to us for any products that we produce that we send out there, and it's going to make people like soybean farmers and we don't have too many exports, but at least like I said, soybeans and any type of fruit or vegetables that we ship around the world, anything that of that matter is it's going to make it much harder for the people who make those to sell their products. It's going to cost them a lot more, and it's going to be a headache. So in theory, the idea of tariffs sound good, but like I said, they're not going to pay for it. They're just going to take that whatever it is that we go up on, put it on top of our goods, and make us the actual consumer pay for it. So no, I don't like it whatsoever, and I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. I don't know where he's going with it. Maybe he has a plan. I doubt it, but we'll have to see. So our second hot take comes from JC the One at Instagram. Asked, what kind of responsibility does social media platforms like Facebook have during the next election? That's a tough one, because from what we know, as far as the intelligence agencies have told us that our elections were hacked. We were spread. We were given, and we in turn spread a lot of disinformation that 100% helped Donald Trump get elected. Now, when it comes down to responsibility, right? My thing is, a group like Facebook, right, which is a private company, private corporation, first of all, shouldn't have that much power to persuade that many people. Now, I understand that's where majority of people get their news, just like here we are on Twitch, and this is a entertainment news show. I feel a responsibility to make sure that I get the information that I get to you guys correct. So for me to be for Facebook, it comes down to how much they value information and making sure that disinformation doesn't spread and start to coerce people or persuade. What's the word I'm looking for? Influence people's decisions. Lobbying, pursuing things like that, things of that nature for sure. Because because the thing is once the seed is there, right? We, for the most part, are the ones that perpetuate it. We are the ones that spread it. We retweet, we repost, we do a lot of the work for people, because it's a lot of times it's not about what's right. It's about what the next person believes, and if I'm in a group that believes the same things, then it makes whatever crazy beliefs that I have that much more normal to have. So if I think there's a pedophile ring getting ran out of a pizza parlor, and that information keeps getting spread, it doesn't matter how true it is. It just matters how many people believe it. The more people believe it, the more people believe it. So last hot take comes from Solo the Truth, my man. Asks, what do I think about the deplatforming of right-wing influencers? That's another tough one too, because you have a situation with like Alex Jones, who's basically responsible for like things like the Pizzagate and what do they call them? The false flaggers, the people who think that Sandy Hook and all these mass shootings are false flags perpetuated by the government. And it's one thing for somebody to just say crazy stuff, but it's another when they have a crazy following behind them that believe the crazy stuff that they say, and they actually take it in. They actually take action towards it. You know, with Pizzagate, you actually have a person who went to this pizza parlor armed to the teeth to try to save these imaginary children um, from a pedophile ring that didn't exist there. And you also have a case where you had people attacking the parents of the children who lost their lives at Sandy Hook and other mass shootings. Who firmly doesn't matter what facts, what you show them, it does not matter to them as long when they see it, they believe it and they go for it. And that's troubling. And I don't know how much you can allow somebody like that to remain on a platform, especially a private platform that's yours that runs off of advertisements. And advertisers have a lot of power. And so when advertisers say so, people like YouTube, Facebook usually do so. But they at the same time though, when you deplatform them, it has the reverse effect. Because 9 times out of 10, well, I don't want to say 9 times out of 10, but anybody, if you didn't know who Farrakhan, who's another person who's kicked off of Facebook and Twitter, if you didn't know who that person is, the news that this person is being kicked off of this site is going to attract people to him, and then the followers themselves feel the need to keep whatever his message was going, and so it just has the reverse effect. People are going to go to them or identify them with even more because it almost justifies it, especially when it's a situation where they're telling you, they don't want you to know this stuff. They don't want you to know this information. And then you silence them. It gives it all credence. It gives it all, it gives it a even bigger purpose. So it ends up having the reverse effect. So I don't know. I'm a true believer in the First Amendment and free speech. Not only do I feel like free speech should be protected, but at the same time, I feel like the best way to know somebody's an idiot is to listen to him talk. Not only should, my theory is, right, say the Nazis were holding a rally in my city, right? I'm not going to go there to shout them down and to make sure that they don't come to my city and spread their propaganda. I'm going to be there taking notes and to see who's there, to see their audience, to see their message, take notes so I know exactly what it is that's their message and what their audience is. So the next time I know how to destroy their how to respond. I don't want to say destroy, but how to respond better to whatever it is, the rhetoric that they're using. If I know it, then I can dispute it. If I just push them into a corner, it doesn't make them go away. If I just take them, deplatform them, if I don't allow them to speak openly in an open area, they just go underground. And that's often more worse because they can grow even bigger, even faster, and basically unharassed because they're underground and nobody knows who or what, where they are, anything like that. So it's often it's more counterintuitive than it helps anything whatsoever. So I don't suggest it. I think these are private. The thing is, these are private companies who are allowed to do whatever they want to do. So for that aspect, I get it. But at the same time, it just has the reverse effect. All it does is it draws people even closer to them, makes people want to know exactly why these people were deplatformed, and it's just counterintuitive. So, with that being said, let's move on to our main story for tonight. So, for those of you who watched the last episode, you probably know by now I like foreign policy. It's one of my best subjects. It's something I try to talk about a lot because I feel like foreign policy is a subject that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but is very, very, very important. So the main topic tonight is about war. Now, literally, we have been at war for over 100 years. Since the 1900s, you'd be hard-pressed to find a 10-year span where we weren't engaged in a military conflict, either at home or abroad. Now, the main purpose of this story is to explain to you how war begets war and how it just becomes a never-ending cycle. Now, let's take the war in Iraq for example. The wars in the Middle East, excuse me. Let's take the wars in the Middle East, for example. Now, in the year 2003, we invaded Iraq, and on December 13th of 2003, Saddam Hussein was captured and executed 3 years later. Now, the results of this capture has led to something that we are still fighting to this day, and isn't even the only example we could use. See, what happens when you topple a regime is that there's an inevitable power vacuum that almost always results in a more ruthless, extreme leader taking in their place. Now, for all the bad things Saddam did during his stint as Iraq's leader, the one thing he did do is keep the entire region relatively stable, and in his absence, ISIS rose to power. So, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with ISIS, but if you're not, ISIS is an extremist group that has its roots as the off-branch of Al Qaeda. Now, believe it or not, Al Qaeda is another extremist group that we created when the United States trained and funded Afghani rebels to fight what was then the Soviets. Once the Soviets were chased out of Afghanistan, the remaining Afghani rebels formed Al Qaeda, and ISIS was formed from within when two sides didn't think the other side was extreme enough. Now, the main mission of ISIS is to destroy the American empire and establish Sharia law over the world. And the results of ISIS moving in and gaining land and influence was a massive refugee and humanitarian crisis. Now, what happens when you have a massive refugee crisis is that they immigrate to the closest or safest neighboring region. Now, before we get to the next step, it's important for you to know that once ISIS had established themselves in Iraq, it allowed them to move and expand into other countries like Syria, Nigeria, the Philippines, and a half dozen other countries. So, getting back to the next step, once you have a humanitarian crisis, a humanitarian refugee crisis, immigrating to neighboring countries, those regions start to destabilize if their economies or just overall governments can't handle it. Once that happens, civil war in the surrounding regions is inevitable. Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, all countries who have ongoing civil wars caused by the destabilization of their countries by the United States. Now, civil war gets out of hand, war crimes are committed, and the United States steps in and intervenes. It's an ongoing cycle. Now, there are more details in between the lines that contribute to this cycle, like the rise of nationalism, when a country takes in refugees fleeing war-torn countries. Any economic instability almost always gets blamed on immigrants. Resentment sets in on both sides, tensions rise, and before you know it, there's violence in the streets. Now, drone strikes that often kill more innocent people than intended targets are the most effective tool used for recruitment by ISIS. I mean, what better way to recruit a young boy whose whole family has been blown to pieces by a drone strike? The massive destruction that war does to a country's infrastructure leaves some families with no choice but to live amongst the violent extremists. I'm sorry. Let's go back to that. The massive destruction that war does to a country's infrastructure leaves some families with no choice but to live amongst the violent extremists that control parts of their country. Now, most of the time, families are left with no other option but to side with whatever extremist group that inhabits the region at the time. It's not like they could just go to the nearest police station and report terrorist activities in their community. They would literally get their head chopped off. Now, I understand America sees itself as an exceptionalist nation and wants other countries to follow in its footsteps. The only problem is other countries didn't get the fresh start that America had in its inception. The chance to look at other countries' mistakes, flaws, positives, and create the best version of a nation it can think of. Not to mention the slaughter of natives, the enrichment of the nation off the backs of slave labor, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. But the main reason I'm telling you this information is because America needs to change. The cycle of war that America finds itself year after year, decade after decade, needs to end. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive to the reality of the spoils of war that America is addicted to: oil, gold, and in some cases, it's cold hard cash. Now, but the cost benefit ratio is almost never equal. Thousands of soldiers are dead, trillions spent. I mean, we're talking about a bottomless pit of money. And I don't see it stopping in the near future. You have people like John Bolton, the national security advisor, this fucking butte, the national security advisor has a hard on for Iran and is trying his hardest to pick a fight with, which Trump is glad to oblige. Syria, for some reason, take Syria. For some reason, media like MSNBC are pushing an agenda for war there. Not to mention, Israel would love a war with Iran. You have Saudi Arabia, who's been funding Al Qaeda in Syria, so that exacerbates the situation and forces America's hand to go in after Assad. Pakistan, a country that has nukes and has been wanting to use them been wanting to drop a bomb on India since the day they got them. These are all situations that America has created through its addiction to war. And we haven't even scratched the surface of the war crimes and atrocities committed by the United States in their crusade activities in the Middle East. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that this country's military-industrial complex is so out of hand, we have pushed ourselves past the point of no return. I mean, even if we were to just leave some of the countries we are currently occupying, it would just result in a failed state that would descend into chaos, and we would still have to eventually step right back in. We've been fighting a war against an idea. You can't just drop a bomb or shoot and kill an idea. Somebody somewhere has to come up with a plan that has a strategy that doesn't just get us out of the Middle East, but a plan to make sure that we do not go back. We have to find a way to give these people their countries back with the sources they need to build a nation that they can sustain itself and the people. But who and how remains to be a question. Now, moving on to our next part of the episode, being that my name is L, we have a new segment called L of the Week. I got the receipt right here. Now, this week's L goes to Alabama and its ridiculous abortion laws. I mean, I try to look at every angle of every situation when it comes to especially situations like abortion. I feel like pro-choice people have a strong argument, and I feel like pro-lifers do as well. I'm not, yay abortion out here, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't like the idea of taking a woman's choice away from her, especially when it's a situation where I can't carry a baby. I never could, never would. So taking that decision away from somebody, to me, is a much worse thing. But the idea that in the case of rape and incest, that you still would outlaw abortion, I mean, that makes zero sense. Why would you want to, first of all, put that burden on the woman who has to carry this child, whether it came from rape or incest or both? Force her to carry this baby, and then the child who has to grow up with that on their shoulders. I mean, it's just a terrible situation all around. It makes absolutely no sense. So with this new segment, we're going to rack up a couple names here on this L. So for everybody, we're going to put Alabama. Alabama straight on this L. And you need to hold this, because in any other state that plans to adopt this ridiculous abortion bill, that is it makes no sense, and it's very appalling. So with that being said, Alabama, you need to hold this. Well, that's all the time I got for you today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this episode was a lot better for you guys and that it continue to be better. So we'll catch you guys next week, next Sunday. But until then, stay out of trouble, kids.